Welcome. This is the Rip Griffin Show podcast, a baseball podcast for baseball fans of all ages. Now, here's your host, Rip Griffin.
What's going on, everybody? I'm going to be your host tonight, Brad Chandler. Rip is on some vacation time with his family. With me tonight, I have Zach from the Nest podcast. How are we doing today, Zach?
Good. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. I'm happy that when I sent you a message and asked you if you would be our guest, that you were like, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, no time is too early to talk about baseball.
Oh yeah. So let's like just dig on into some stuff. We have a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about the San Diego Padres, especially what they have done in the past 24 to, I'm going to say 48 hours, because the Snell thing was going on Sunday night. But before we get into that, I want to do what we were originally planning on doing today and talk a little bit about what happened in 2020 as far as baseball goes. You and I were talking a little bit before we started the live feed here, and we had some tragedy happen in 2020. We had some Hall of Famers who, like I said, tragically passed away. I actually wrote a couple articles on these Hall of Famers for the Nest podcast. So, I mean, we've got Tom Seaver, Lou Brock, Bob Gibson, Al Kaline, Whitey Ford. There's just so many deaths that have happened this year. Which one? I have a guess on which one probably impacted you the most, but I'm just going to ask anyway. Which player, Hall of Fame player, ended up impacting you?
It's a big tie between Bob Gibson and Lou Brock. I think Lou Brock as a whole made a bigger impact to the Cardinals fan base. But if you look at what Bob Gibson was able to do, that man is absolutely special when it comes to the mound. I mean, for those that don't know, they had to lower the mound because he was just so dominant, and it still didn't make a difference. He just still went out there and threw absolute fire.
Yeah, I remember watching the documentary on MLB.TV about Bob Gibson in the hole, having to lower the mound. And I thought that was absolutely hilarious. And the guy was just like, you know what? Screw you. That means nothing to me. I'm still going to go out there and throw heat.
Mm-hmm.
For me, honestly, I'd have to go with Seaver. He was closer to where I'm from. I understand where Gibson comes from for you and Brock, because you're a Cardinals fan.
Yep.
So Seaver seems to touch me just a little bit. I did end up writing an article for you guys about Tom Seaver. I'm happy that the Mets ended up paying tribute to him the way that he needed it. And, it's a tragedy that, with all the losses and everything, especially with what's going on in the world.
Sure.
Anything else with the whole Hall of Famers that have passed away? I mean, not anything else. I should have said that. But the Hall of Famers that have passed away, great players, Al Kaline, Whitey Ford, I may be missing some others. I'm going off the top of my head here. Rest in peace to all those guys. Other things that have happened in 2020, you saw the trade of Red Sox outfielder Mookie Betts, who is now LA Dodgers outfielder. What did you end up thinking about that trade at the time that it happened?
At first glance, that trade seems like a terrible deal. Why would you let go one of the best players of this generation? But when you kind of read and look more into it, Mookie is great, and I can't take that away from him. But the Red Sox were not in a position to give him the years that he wanted. They are obviously, as you saw this season, in need of a farm system and are currently in a rebuild. And that just wouldn't have fit in with what Mookie wanted to do. So it was a mutual parting. I think them picking up Verdugo has worked out, at least this weird COVID season. He did very well. So I think that the Red Sox did not make a bad trade by doing that. And I think a lot of Red Sox fans that like Mookie should kind of understand the position that the Red Sox have taken where, you can't just pay all these people all this money and expect to have any kind of farm system. So when all those guys end up leaving eventually, then you're left with nothing, and you kind of have to just restart and restart the prospects and restart scouting and all that stuff. So that's just where they are as an organization, and it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right. And, I'm a Sox fan, and at first it kind of hurt, but after doing some research on it and whatnot, it makes sense. It made all the sense in the world. They traded Mookie Betts, and they also got rid of half of David Price's contract. They ended up getting Connor Wong, Jeter Downs, and Alex Verdugo. A lot of Red Sox Nation were a little upset with the trade package that ended up coming to Boston because they were expecting pitching. And Brusdar Gatterall was one of the pitchers that were actually in the package at first. And seeing what he did with the Dodgers, a lot of fans in Boston were upset, but they have to realize that when the package was being done, or the deal was being done to get Gatterall, Brusdar was actually, the Twins were trying to sell him as a starter. Mm-hmm. And obviously he wasn't a starter because the Dodgers didn't even use him as a starter.
Right.
So,
yeah, if you've ever seen his stuff, he can throw 100 and probably 100 plus, but he has like almost zero control. At least that's what I remember from the World Series.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of it. He's definitely got fast stuff. He's definitely got some personality as well. So it goes with the team. Other things that ended up happening in baseball this year, Manfred made it 60 games. And we all were like, oh, what's going on? Why is it only going to be 60 games? This isn't going to happen because of the whole COVID protocols and everything that's going on. Miami started off with their team ended up getting coronavirus and all that stuff. They got the virus, they got sick, and they were spreading it around. So they stopped the games between them and Philly. What are your thoughts on the outcome of the 2020 season?
For all things considered, it went pretty well. I remember my co-host and I on our show were talking, May timeframe or whatever, when they were still trying to figure everything out. We were basically convinced that we weren't going to have a baseball season because the owners didn't want to pay the guys if they weren't going to have fans in the seats, and the players didn't want to play for anything less than what they signed for. The fact that they were able to pull off a 60-game season in the midst of all this, I think is pretty spectacular. And like you mentioned, they had a bunch of hiccups. The Cardinals had a huge outbreak themselves too, but they were able to do it. And they have a champion, and they had ups and downs. But if you look around sports, every league has had some sort of issues like that. And all things considered, I think hats off to MLB. Could things have been handled a little differently? Sure. But this was a wild year for everybody. And they were just trying to make the best out of their situation. So I think most of the people in that organization are trying to do the right thing and have good heads on their shoulders. Could be a little different story for Rob Manfred, but
you and I actually see eye to eye on Rob Manfred, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So you said that we ended up having a champion. I want to talk about the news that ended up coming out at the beginning of the year. It was probably the biggest bit of news for MLB, and one of the bigger scandals that have happened since the steroid era. And that was the Astra sign stealing scandal. It came out that they were stealing signs in the 2017 during their championship season, and they were using trash cans. And I mean, there's been sign stealing going on for since baseball's been around, as long as baseball's been around, So bringing in trash cans is a little bit of a different twist to it, no technologies. That's one of the things is like sign stealing is acceptable, but like you don't use the technologies and stuff like that. But onto the Astro situation, what did you think as soon as you heard about the Astro scandal?
I thought it was one of the most disgusting things ever in major league sports. I thought that the Astros organization should have been severely punished, if not disbanded. I think they should have been forced to sell and all this stuff. Now, that was, I think, just a little bit of anger because a sport that I really care about has been tainted, and a cheater basically won the championship. After the craziness has kind of calmed down, I think that they were severely underpunished, absolutely severely. But at the same time, this is just what people do when they're at the highest level of a competitive sport or any other thing that's competitive, stock market, real estate, whatever. People try to find an edge, and people try to find a way to get above the other guy. And this was their way of doing that. The only thing that I would like to see done differently is bigger punishments, like a year for what's their GM or not GM, their manager, Hinch, AJ Hinch, a year for Hinch. I think the GM got suspended too, but it was like a slap on the wrist type stuff, if you ask me. Other than that, at this point, it's in the past. We all know that people are going to try to do whatever they can to win, and it might not always be the most more moral thing to do, but that's just the way humans are. I think that the organization can get over this, and people will always probably remember it, at least for our lifetimes, but it's not the end of the world. They're not just evil monsters that need to be destroyed. They're just baseball players, and they're all just people trying to win a championship.
So I definitely agree with some of the stuff that you had said there at first when it first came out. And they were talking about it. I was like, well, geez, let's take the trophy away. And let's not have a 2017 champion at all. But I mean, after all I've been through in the year 2020, all the research that I've gone and I've done, they're not the only team.
Right.
Everybody out there is doing their own type of sign stealing. Even my own Boston Red Sox. So it's like, do I think that they should have gotten more? Maybe. Do I think that we should get over it? If you found out what your team actually did, you wouldn't be talking.
Sure.
And that's kind of where I'm at.
Sure.
Well, a lot of people came at me when I was talking about how the Astros, this, that, and the other thing. They were like, well, what about the 2018 Boston Red Sox? And I just basically was like, I'll shut up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the only thing that makes this one a little bit different is that it was so orchestrated. Like they had to somehow get, I can't remember how they did it, but they got some sort of footage or something.
It was like a live feed into the what is it called? the team room, whatever it is.
Sure,
the clubhouse. And then there was like a camera footage of, say, Correa hitting a garbage can. It was like no hits if it was a fastball. They decoded everything.
Right.
Yeah. That was it was extreme. And then come to find out that the manager of the Boston Red Sox, Alex Cora, was actually he was like the ringleader of it, supposedly. So I don't know. I mean, like, now that Cora's in it, I think I might just like, all right, guys, I throw my hands in the air.
Yeah.
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it obviously showed last year that the Astros still, could do what they ended up doing. They ended up going to the World Series, facing the Nationals. They won. And they busted ass this year too and got to what was it, the ALCS. So, I mean, they're a good team.
Yeah, yeah,
they've got some good players.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing of it is they are good. It's not like this cheating thing, made them something they're not. It just elevated them. And kind of like with the steroid era. In my opinion, Barry Bonds would have hit maybe 2/3 of the homers that he did, maybe even more. But the steroids just give him that little extra jump. It's not like steroids made him the absolute greatest hitter in all of baseball. That takes more a skill that steroids can't give you. The Astros players are obviously good at baseball, but knowing what pitch is coming obviously makes you that much better. So it's one of those things where I think people are always going to view those players as that, like George Springer is a hot ticket item on people's radar for this off season. And if he goes to a team that, the fan base just views him as a cheater or whatever, then I think they're going to miss out on a special player. And it's a crappy thing to have tainted on your name that you are a cheater, which he is. Sure, you can call him that. But I mean, like you said earlier, if you want to dig into your own team, you might find some things that you're not happy with.
Yeah. And to your Barry Bonds thing, Rip and myself, we did the San Francisco Giants a couple weeks ago, and we were just going through some of his stats that were absolutely ridiculous. His intentional walks, his walks. I mean, like he had a year where his on base percentage was through the roof because he had so many intentional walks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think I might be a minority here, but I think, in all honesty, that the steroid era guys such as like Bonds, Clemens, Jose Canseco, McGuire, Sosa, those guys, I believe that they did something for baseball that brought the attention to baseball, and it helped baseball after the strike in the 90s.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I believe that there should be some sort of wing or floor in the Baseball Hall of Fame for those guys.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what the sport would be like today if those guys hadn't have been as successful as they were, because like you said, the strike really had an impact on that sport, and people lost interest, people moved on, and it wasn't very exciting. And then these guys started lighting the scoreboard up, and people started to pay attention, and it was exciting to watch. The race between who was going to get most home runs and stuff like that. That was huge, and that really kind of made people appreciate baseball again. If that wouldn't have happened, and if it would have just been mediocrity for years to come after that, I don't know where this sport would be at right now, because it's struggling as it is. And who knows if it would have even survived, the 2000s and the 2010s, if they didn't have that huge jump in
ratings and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely agree, because back in, I want to say it was like 98, definitely 99 era. I just started paying attention to baseball, like really, like a lot. Like I used to watch baseball, but you had the Mark McGuire, you had the Sosa going on, and just watching these guys going after 70 home runs in one season. I was playing like Nintendo 64 trying to keep up with them, Yep. So, what else happened in 2020? Manfred got booed in the World Series.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Manfred is probably the most hated commissioner in all of baseball. I don't know if I've ever. There might have been some guys back in like the early days and whatnot, but right now he's got like 1 foot in the hole. He's like throwing dirt over himself. He called the commissioner's trophy a piece of metal. I think the best part of 2020 was when baseball was when all those fans at the World Series was just booing the hell out of him.
Yeah, that is great. What really pissed me off about Manfred this year was that, you know, he saw the success that the National League had in having a DH, and he didn't care at all. He didn't push the issue. He didn't say we're going to try to make this happen. He just stood back and said, we have no idea if the NL is going to get a DH. We don't blah, 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 blah. And I could not stand that. I think if you ask any average, you know, casual baseball fan, they're going to say, does the NL need a DH? Yes. And Manfred stood up there and told basically the whole world, we don't know if you're going to get it. We don't know if we're going to give it to you. And to me, seeing how it went this year was a no-brainer to say, this is how it's going to be from now on. The 2020 COVID season was the catalyst to basically force the NL to have a DH. And it worked out great, and people love it. And now it's here to stay. And he didn't even deliver on that.
Yeah, I'm 100% behind the DH in the National League. I think it would have benefited it would definitely benefit the National League. It showed this year. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't want to see a pitcher going up there and laying down a sacrifice bunt. I don't want to see a pitcher going up there and get struck out on 3 fastballs. Yep. You know, like the only pitcher that I can think of right now that can actually hit a ball is Madison Bumgarner.
Right.
And other than that, I mean, you don't really have too many pitchers that can actually be a threat at the plate.
Sure. And people will try to say that Shohei Ohtani is the first player that's a potential dual threat guy. He's been injured. He can't do that. That is almost impossible to do in today's day and age.
I believe that the Shohei Ohtani experiment needs to end.
Yeah.
The pitcher situation, they need to either make him 100% like a hitter / outfielder, or make him a pitcher. But in all honesty, the pitching thing is not working out for them.
Yeah.
And there's just the two-way player thing isn't going to work because of the fact that you have too much that you have to do as a pitcher to where you can't focus on doing what you have to do as a hitter.
Yep, absolutely. And it was weird how they had it set up, because on the days that he pitched, the days before and the days after, he wouldn't hit. So for 3 days, he wouldn't hit, and then he would hit maybe 2 if he's on the 5-man rotation. How many at bats are you getting out of him? So what's even the point? So yeah, that experiment I think is it's cool. It's neat. It's cool that a player has the physical ability to do both, but I just don't think it works. It's 2 different worlds. It's 2 different mechanics. And in today's day and age, it just doesn't work. And he's already had Tommy John, so it's almost all downhill from here, unless he just is one of those guys that gets Tommy John and absolutely just lights it up afterwards. Who knows? But I don't see it working.
The other thing with Shohei Ohtani that kind of like I've seen it with Angels fans that kind of scares me is the fact that he's a right-handed pitcher and he's a left-handed hitter. Yeah. So he's got that, that right hand right up front. Mm-hmm. So if he gets hit there, that's no good. And I think the whole Ohtani thing, the reason why they got him was to get butts in the seats. Sure. So, I mean, you got Mike Trout. That's going to get you some butts in the seat. And then you're going to have Shohei Ohtani. We got a 2-way player. Yeah. So, I mean, there's 2020 was weird. I'm definitely hoping that 2021 is going to be a little bit better. Looking forward, it's right now they're saying that they're going to be pushing the opening day until May. I don't know how that's going to affect spring training. I don't know how that's going to affect minor league baseball. Minor league baseball got absolutely devastated in 2020. We don't know how the prospects are going to end up coming out of that. A lot of the teams ended up getting split. I know that there's I think it's a lawsuit right now with the Staten Island Yankees. I'm not sure if it was the Yankees, but I know it's one of the affiliates of the New York Yankees. And everything that's been going on with the minor league system has just been crazy for 2020.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It has been. So now talking about prospects, we actually just got some news in the past 24, I'm going to say 48 hours. We talked about this. The San Diego Padres, since the trade deadline in 2020 until today, have traded away 20 prospects. They have got Mike Clevenger. They ended up getting Mitch Moreland from the Boston Red Sox. I'm not 100% sure on the rest of the players that they ended up getting, but I know that they traded 4 players for Blake Snell, and they traded a few players for Hugh Darvish, and then they just signed, I'm going to totally screw this name up, but Ha-Sung Kim.
Yeah, that's close enough.
From South Korea. Yeah, I was talking about this on another podcast last night, and I was just like, I'm going to ruin this name, and, Kim is literally like, Kim in South Korea or in Asia is like the Smith in America. So kudos to Terry for that one.
Yeah.
But what were your thoughts as soon as like the San Diego Padres, that the news came out that the Padres are legitimately trying to get, we're going to talk about the 2020 season. We're not going to get into the trade that just happened, but like they traded for Clevenger, they traded for Moreland, they traded they had a couple other pieces in there as well. What were your thoughts in that for 2020?
I definitely thought that the Padres saw what they had in Tatis. They didn't give Manny Machado a huge contract just so he could sit out and make money over fist for doing nothing. And they legitimately thought that they could take on the Dodgers, and I am here for it. I love to see a small market club, a club who has just had terrible success, and their fans have just been raked over the coals year after year. I like when that kind of team comes forward and says, we've got a special player that is from our farm system, and we're going to try to make something happen while we have him. And while he's not making, $30 million a year or whatever, we can afford to pay some other guys to bolster our roster and try to make a run at a World Series. Like you mentioned, they gave up a lot of prospects, and we can get into that if you want to. But I think it's really not a bad idea in this climate. They're going after some absolute heavy hitters. Obviously, you mentioned Blake Snell and Hugh Darvish, 2 of the best starting pitchers in the league. Obviously, Blake Snell is a Cy Young. Did Darvish get one or no?
Did he get
what did he? Cy Young?
I don't believe he won a Cy Young.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. Nonetheless, he's a great pitcher.
He was in the talks for last year. I know that.
Right.
So I just pulled up a list. It looks like it's a little more than 20 players actually. So I'll just list them off real fast. We got Luis Patino, Cole Wilcox, Andres Munoz, Joey Cantillo, Dylan Coleman, Matt Brash, Blake Hunt, Owen Miller, Hudson Potts, Gabriel Arias, Reggie Prosciutto, Yason Santana, Taylor Trammell, Edward Olivers, probably messed that one up, Jason Rosario, Ismail Mania, Owen Cassie. I'm probably ruining these names, and I apologize. And those were all their prospects. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 18 prospects. But hold on, there's a few MLB ready players as well. You had Zach Davies, Cal Quantrill, Austin Hedges, Francisco Mejia, Luis Torrens, Ty France, and Josh Naylor.
There's a huge list of people for what, 5 guys they got?
I'm pretty sure they got a little bit more than 5 guys, but I mean, you got Clevenger. You had to give up a few guys for that. I think they may have given up a little too much for Mitch Moreland. That was just a 1 month rental. And they didn't even pick up his option, which was shocking, I guess. He didn't actually produce that well for the Padres, but it's crazy with the amount of players that they ended up giving up. So let's dig in a little bit with what they have done in the past 2 days. So we have Blake Snell, who was last seen in Game 6 of the World Series after throwing 73 pitches and dominating the LA Dodgers. The last thing we saw was Kevin Cash walking up to the mound, taking the ball out of Blake Snell's hand, and literally Blake Snell's like, what the, like 73 pitches. So their explanation to why they pulled him out after 73 pitches, even though he's dominating, we don't want the batter seeing him for the third time. That's analytics for you there.
Mm-hmm.
And that right there basically lost them that game, because I'm pretty sure the next pitcher that came in gave up a single, then gave up some more hits, and then runs started scoring, and it just turned out bad for the Tampa Bay Rays. At that point, I had set in my mind that Blake Snell was going to end up getting traded, because you could tell he wasn't happy. There was a earlier game, and I believe the ALCS against the Astros, where Kevin Cash came out, took the ball from him, and you could read his lips. He definitely said the F-bomb, definitely dropped it. He's like, what the F are we doing? Why are we doing this? And, well, he got traded to the Padres.
Yep.
I was completely shocked. There was rumors that he was going to be traded. There was rumors that they were looking to trade him to Seattle, which is where he's from. And having the Padres unload four prospects for Blake Snell was eye-opening, kind of. It's like, wow, this is really how it's going to happen.
Yeah.
So now that the Padres are doing this, you have the fan bases of everybody else. So like the Mets, the Red Sox, the Yankees, all their fans are like, well, all these people are signing people while our GMs are just sitting with their thumb up their ass.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case. It's not like, the Yankees don't really have a farm system to trade away for those pieces. I'm sure they probably come up with some pieces. The Red Sox depth isn't all that great to be trading for those pieces. So trading for a Blake Snell wouldn't be ideal. And then Steve Cohen went on Twitter last night, and he was like, good for the Padres. They had a number 5 farm system. They had the players, and good for them to do that. And then people were just roasting him. It's like, well, why don't you trade Jacob deGrom? It's like, well, you're going to trade Jacob deGrom for prospects? And then no. I mean, some of these people have really bad takes. But sorry to get off track here. With the Blake Snell trade, what were your thoughts? I know I was shocked.
Yeah, I was absolutely shocked. And I guess maybe the writing should have been on the wall. Like you were saying, they pulled him out of probably the most important game of his career, and he was absolutely dealing. For them to pull their Cy Young winning starting pitcher, I don't know if they had that much, just absolute trust in their bullpen, or if it was something else. I don't know what their deal is with Blake Snell, but they were willing to give him away for, prospects, which that is good to have. But when you're talking about a proven starting pitcher who is destined for the Hall of Fame and prospects, I don't know if those two equal a good trade for the Rays, but they made it, and it worked out great for the Padres. I think that was an absolutely great trade for the Padres and a terrible trade for the Rays, but whatever.
Yeah, so Snell's contract is actually He becomes a free agent at the end of the 2023 season. He will be 30 years old. He's due to get 10 and a half this year in 2021, 12 and a half in 2022, and then 16 in 2023.
That is not that much for as good of a pitcher as he is, in my opinion.
So, and who's to say that they don't end up trading him in one of those seasons, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
So there's that possibility. And so, and also last year in the 2020 season, he only pitched 50 innings.
I could see that.
He had 324. He had a 3.24 ERA, and I had a gentleman actually point this out to me. Outside of 2018, Snell has never pitched more than 130 innings.
Interesting. Injury?
Nope. I don't know if it was injury. I know last year he was kind of injured. He was hurting a little bit, but I do know that Tampa Bay typically goes with their analytics.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, if you want to, we're going to pull you, you know, stuff like that. So there's a good chance that ended up happening. And they were like, okay, you're not pitching more than 5 innings. So, and let me see, the postseason, he only pitched. So, and all in all, in 2020, he pitched 60 innings.
Yeah, honestly, that makes sense. Like you said, with the Rays are analytical team, it was a 60-game season. It kind of makes sense. I could see him being a little limited if the Rays are super analytical, which obviously they are. And I mean, as long as his ERA is low, that doesn't faze me at all. As long as he's not been injured, as long as his ERA is low and all that good stuff, it doesn't really bother me what kind of innings he pitched for the Rays. So if I were a Padres fan, I wouldn't worry about that too much.
Right. I'm going to say hi quick to our buddy Brandon. He seems a little confused on you being on the Rip Griffin show today.
I can do my own things too here.
So, yeah, I think that the Blake Snell thing was a pretty good trade. And it's going to end up working for the Padres. I actually watched the video a little bit before coming on, and he seems super, super pumped to be pitching for that team. Oh, he's upset with the trade, with the fact that he's going to leave behind some of his friends and whatnot, which is understandable. But I mean, dude, you're going to be able to play with Tatis.
Yeah, that group of guys that is going to play for that team is going to be insane. Clevenger, Tatis, Machado, Snell. I mean, I can see them really broing out and having a good time out on the baseball field.
It's gonna happen. I've been watching a little bit of the Dominican Winter League, and Tatis just started playing. I don't know if that was in the Dominican, but they just posted a video of him playing, and he's like going all out.
Yeah.
He's not just being, you know, little sissy girl. He's going all out like he's playing for the Padres right now.
Yep.
So just a real quick recap on Blake Snell. So I ended up finding a website. This is a perfect website. I told you about it, baseballsavant.com. And it shows you exactly how much of a pitcher, like what pitches a pitcher uses the most. And it shows you the spin of the actual pitch. So real quick, in 2020, Blake Snell had fastballs, and that's 50.6% of his pitches. He threw 173 changeups. That was 19.8% of his pitches. He threw 131 sliders, which I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't realize that he had a nasty slider. It kind of looks like a Chris Sale slider. So if you're a right-handed hitter, it's going inside. It's down and in. So that he threw that 131 times for 15%, and then he throws his curveball for 14.6%. So he's got a good mix. Obviously, you're throwing your fastball a little bit more, but with his off-speed pitches and whatnot, he's mixing them up. So,
sure. Yeah.
The other thing that happened with the Padres, the exciting news, Hugh Darvish, there was talks before Blake Snell, and then they were like, everybody thought that Blake Snell was going to end up stopping them from going after Hugh Darvish. Nope, that didn't happen. Hugh Darvish ended up being announced as, I don't think it's actually been 100% like announced yet, because I know the Blake Snell announcement actually happened a little bit before the show, but we could basically say that he's going to be a Padre unless he fails like a physical or something like that. So what were your thoughts on that after the Blake Snell trade?
Yeah, I mean, to add another monster pitcher like they did was crazy. And it just goes to show they are absolutely serious about taking on the Dodgers with everything that they possibly can. And it makes sense that they would pick up Yu Darvish because it seems like the Cubs are trying to offload. They've got some guys that are looking to make money. Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, and who knows what they're going to do with those kind of contracts. But it seems like that the Cubs are trying to let some pieces go, and apparently Yu Darvish was one of those, which is kind of crazy, just because he's basically their ace, and it's him and who's up there? Kyle Hendricks. Is there other pitcher of note?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't understand why you would give up your best pitcher for some prospects. I mean, like I said, it's got to be some sort of rebuild, some sort of just offload of money on the books or whatever. But worked out great for the Padres yet again.
Yeah, I mean, you have Blake Snell, who won the Cy Young Award in 2018. You have Hugh Darvish, who was a Cy Young Award candidate in 2020, who ended up going to Bauer. And to answer your question there, Brandon, it looks like Bauer has actually been I don't really know how to say it without swearing here, but I'm not going to. He's been kind of like teasing every team out there. Oh, I'm gonna. How does it look with me with a Dodgers hat? How does it look with me with a Mets hat? It's like I'm actually kind of tired of the Trevor Bauer thing going on right now on social media. So
I enjoy him as a player and as a person. He's exciting, but he's kind of taken this a little too far. He's acting like he's Michael Jordan and
you're right.
Sign with whoever he wants for a one-day contract for $50 million or whatever. And
right. His whole thing is, let me just stop you, bro. Let me just stop you. You've had one really good year, and it was in a 60-game season.
Right.
You are not that great. Your earned run average fluctuates. You're not that great of a pitcher. I will give you this. You stay healthy. You're never on the IL, DL, or whatever. So whoever he ends up signing with, I'm sorry, whatever. To me, I think he might end up signing on the West Coast. The San Diego Padres were one of the teams that I was thinking he was actually going to sign with because of the whole fact that his best friend is Mike Clevenger, and that would make sense. But right now, it kind of seems like the Angels need to sign Trevor Bauer. It's like the Angels need him more than he needs the Angels.
Sure. Yeah. Honestly, I think if whoever does sign him, and if it does end up being a one-year contract like he wants it to be, you better hope that that's a good year, because he's going to be an expensive bust if he doesn't turn out.
I think he's going to be raking in about 25 to 27 million.
Yeah, and that's an insane amount of money.
Yeah,
for one starting pitcher.
Money for a guy who had a Cy Young. I mean, he had an under 2 ERA in 2020. He pitched well. He pitched really well, but let's see him do it in a 162 season,
Right. Yeah.
So back to Hugh Darvish before we end this segment. So last year he ended up pitching. He threw 76 innings. He had a 2.1 ERA, which, like I said, he was a Cy Young Award candidate. I believe he was also in the talks for MVP. what else here? In the postseason, what did he pitch? He pitched six and 2/3 innings. Over the postseason, he got a loss against Miami, which I remember that one was pretty bad. So, Darvish has got a bunch of pitches.
Mm-hmm.
He's got I guess his best pitch is his cutter. He throws that 43.6% of the time in 2020. His slider, he threw 15.2% of the time. His four-seam fastball was 14.7% of the time. It's odd that your four-seam fastball is going to be your number 3 pitch.
Very.
His curveball wasn't too far behind with 12.1% of the time. He has a sinker, which he threw for 9.5% of the time, and he has a split finger, which he threw for 4.9%. I do know that he likes to throw his little ephus pitch every once in a while. He likes throwing people off with that. So now let's talk his contract. I know that he is under control until 2023. He'll be age 36. He's getting $22 million for 2021. He's going to be knocked down to $19 million in 2022, and he's going to be knocked down another $1 million in 2023.
Nice.
So, and the Haeyoung Kim signing was a little upsetting for me. He was being in the talks for the Boston Red Sox. He was also in the talks for the Toronto Blue Jays. I hear that he's a shortstop and a third baseman, which kind of throws me off because obviously you got Tatis Jr. and you got Manny Machado.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if I think they would throw him at second base, put him at second base, and play one of those two positions if like Snell, not Snell, if Tatis or Machado needs a day off.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
So, all right, everybody. We're going to end up calling that a night here. Again, Rip was on vacation, so this was a one-off. We were supposed to actually do something on just the 2020 season. We were going to talk about the San Diego Padres next week. Obviously, with the big news, we had to do it this week. Please make sure to check out our podcast on Apple and Spotify. We put out a new podcast every single week. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter at Rip Griffin Show. We have a Mike Trout baseball card that we put up for like a giveaway. So all you have to do, you go onto our Twitter. I'm going to keep retweeting it until the day we give it away, which will be in our next episode. All you have to do is follow, retweet, and that's it. You're entered. And then we will reach out to you. We will name the winner on the next episode. Zach actually is in the contest.
Yep.
So, Zach, before we go, why don't you go ahead and plug your show, your podcast?
Sure. So I co-host the Nest podcast with a buddy of mine, Brandon. We go live every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And you
8 p.m. Eastern.
8 p.m. Eastern. Sorry. Yeah. Stupid Eastern time. 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central. You can find us on Twitter at NestPod. Nest is capitalized. We do our live streams there. We do them on YouTube, Facebook. Of course, we have the podcast as well on Apple, iTunes, and Spotify, and all those other ones. We cover basically the big names in sports. We cover NFL, a little NBA. We cover UFC, and obviously we cover baseball. Not so much while the off season is occurring. We'll probably talk about this huge, trade for the Padres. But then once the season kicks up, obviously we kick fully into baseball talk and stuff like that. So if you're a fan of sports in general, you'd probably enjoy our show. So come out and check us out.
Yeah, I started off writing blogs for the Nest podcast, and if it wasn't for the fact that I was writing blogs with you guys, about baseball, I probably wouldn't be a part of the Rip Griffin show. So thank you guys so much for giving me the opportunity. Also, next week, Rip will be back on this show. We will be back on Thursday. And on Monday, I'm going to be joining you guys. We're going to be talking about the Padres and everything that happened this week.
Yeah, should be a good time.
Thank you again, everybody. You guys have a good night. And let's there.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Rip Griffin Show. Make sure to subscribe to the show on all the major podcast platforms. Follow Rip on Twitter @RipGriffin2.